All right, look, we're just going to dive right into it, Josh. You have been with Case since what year?
2019.
2019. And the purpose of this podcast right here is to really shed some light on the 7 equities. Yeah. It's one of the first things that I love to share with agents, because I think it's so easy to think that, okay, once you reach your finance goals, once you reach your money goals, well then that's it. Then you've got it all figured out. Then you've achieved total life happiness.
Nope.
So I'd love to hear from your end, like, how was your introduction to the 7 equities?
Yeah, well, it's funny, Project Mindset's back, and that was kind of my first introduction. I remember you did a series on each of the ones.
Yes,
and even your sister was in one,
Yep.
Mike Diamond was in one.
Yeah.
And I just remember going through those, and I'd never heard of anything around the 7 equities, but it's one of those things, once it's like presented in front of you, you're like, that makes total sense.
Right.
Because we're created as whole beings, right? And if you only look at the business and the money, you miss all these other layers.
Yes.
And whoever you're being when you're poor, you're going to be amplified when you're rich.
Come on
right?
now. Yeah,
and
that's fire.
who do you want to be at the end of the day?
Who do you want to be? And so we like to first start off with the foundation. Yep. And the foundation, of course, you've seen this as you walk by some magic crystal store. Mind, body, soul. Yeah. But when you really break that down, it's so much more than just saying, oh, mind, body, soul. Like, what is that? What does that really mean? And we like to call that the foundation. Yep. And so I wanted to take a second to really just highlight these areas of mind, body, soul, and what are some practices that you can have in each of these equities, right? So tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is actually the mind part of it, because when I joined your team, we had a coaching session around like the Christmas, New Year's that we just went through, where I'd been on the team for a few months, was just so frustrated, didn't see anything happening. You have high expectations for your team.
Right.
And you're like, you gave me coaching on consistency, but then you said, look, you're dealing with just this lack in feeling worthy of good things. And you're
Think
like,
about that for a second, though. So I said that. How did I present that to you? Yeah,
well, you went with consistency first. You're like, dude, you sprint for 10 days and then you chill. You sprint for 10 days, and then you said then you could fix that. But you're like, it seems like you don't feel like you're worthy of having great things. Right?
Yeah.
And it was just a matter of fact. You're like, look, I don't know how to help you with that, but I can point it out. I don't know what that is stemming from.
Right.
And it's like you just shined a spotlight right on something for me that it took me months. Maybe I'm still working through it, right?
I don't think we ever stop working through those issues that, for me, like the holidays, it's really interesting how many challenges I have where it's like this core battle. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I feeling this way?
Yeah.
Well, my first 13, 14, 15 years of life, there was some trauma, and that trauma was always amplified around the holidays.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's natural to want to have somebody give us the answers.
Right.
We want to have, just tell me what it is. But if you've ever been through any kind of therapy, which I stay in therapy, I have like 3 different therapists, they're not giving you any answers. They're helping you find the answers through a series of questions. And I think that's where the magic is being aware of that limiting belief and taking real time to think about, like, well, what do I think about myself?
Right.
What are some of the limiting beliefs? What are some of the make-believe BS stories? I say you've got to realize the real lies. Something happened when you were 4 or 5 years old, 7 years old, and you've been carrying this thing forever. Or maybe it was a few years ago, and somebody shared an opinion about you, and you made that opinion real. And now you go around with this chip on your shoulder, and it's just a lie. So I think part of our mindset is being aware of limiting doubts, being aware of make-believe stories, and getting present to them. And I look at it like your foundation again, right? You're uncovering, you need to lay a new foundation. Well, guess what? We need to we need to dig through that soil.
Yeah, and something you're always talking about is be, do, have.
Yeah.
And that was, the be part was always
Right.
challenging for me because I didn't want to be a poser. And so it took some time on your team to like, be like, well, you're not being a poser.
Right.
Right? You're embracing who you need to be in order to like accelerate your business, be a better husband, be a better father, right? Because really where my lack of worthiness lied was I just had this sense for like a decade that I was like a victim or something. Right. It was really strange, right? And I don't have like all the like check marks in my timeline to say this is what contributed to that. But I'm starting to see those, but I see the broad stroke. And I was like, why am I living my life like this, right? So I had to focus on being someone different, right?
That's huge, man. Yeah, last year for me in terms of mindset, the thing that I had to break through was that I was capable and good enough to sell in the $10 million plus arena. For some reason, I had a block right when it got to like 8. 4, 5, 6, 7, no problem. But it got to 8 and I was like, I don't know what my deal was. You know, I have coached brand new rookie agents to do 10, 11, $12 million deals. I coached an agent, you know, it was their probably 4th or 5th transaction, listed a $12 million house, you know, and I'm just watching them in the background like, oh my gosh, I can't even do that. But, you know, I think we all are on our own path. We're all on our own journey. It wasn't until last year that I started to really uncover these make-believe stories that was limiting myself from stepping into that price point. And as soon as I did, bam, you know, we saw deal after deal above $7-8 million last year. But it starts with us. It starts with you. So when you're working on your 7 equity goals, again, it's your mind, your body, your health, your well-being, and your spirit. And one of the things we would like to encourage people is consider the SMART strategy, right? SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time sensitive. Right. So on each of these goals, all 7 goals, consider the SMART method. Okay, am I being specific with my physical goal? Is it measurable, right? Is it actionable? Can I relay an action that I can quantify if it's happening or not? Is it realistic, right? Do I look at the goal and I feel burned out right away because it's so off the wall, right? Yes, you want your goals to uplift you, to inspire you, but you also don't want your goals to be like a burden and like, you know, put you into breakdown just thinking about how far you have to go to reach this thing. And then finally, the T, is it time sensitive? So mind, body, soul, I think the soul side of the goals, at least for me, that's what took the longest to develop. You know, I think you're probably further in your spiritual walk than I am. What kind of light could you shed in terms of, well, what do you mean soul? What do you mean spirit? What kind of goals do I set there?
No, I think, so I'm a Christian and have been since 2002, but I didn't grow up going to church at all, right? That was just the relationship between me and the Lord. So when I look at soul, you know, it's me connecting with God in a way that is in a lot of ways private but corporate at the same time, right? So prayers and in the Word and then at church, right? And being, of course, that's one area that I have been consistent in, right? Since 2002.
Awesome.
But you know, then it's realizing that and taking that confidence into the other areas. So I think, that just comes back to consistency, right? But if it's around spirit and soul and that equity, you need to kind of like dip out and have that private space on your own. But then you need to dip in with everyone else who's hanging in that space too, to have that community.
Yeah, that's good.
That's the balance I found. And it's too easy to go all community. It's too easy to want to be a hermit, right? And it's finding that balance. But.
And I think for all of the equities, but especially these first three that we call the foundation, it's important to remember, what love really is. They say love is spelled Time. So I think with each of these areas, what will be a game changer for you is if you really look at, well, how much time, if I first need to love myself before I can love on anybody else, well, how much time am I really spending elevating and improving these three areas?
Right.
Mind, body, soul. And that's a great place to start, right? And so moving out of the foundation piece, you go into the next equity, which is family.
Yeah.
Then friends, then comes business and money. And so the philosophy, the thing that we want to encourage people to get is that if you can just be abundantly wealthy in your mind, body, soul, in your core family dynamic, and with that circle of friends, your social life, you're going to show up to work, the place where you're there to actually grow and make money, not needing it so much.
Right.
You're already wealthy where it matters most. So guess what happens to your ability to attract more of it when you're already feeling it?
Yeah, it's there.
It just amplifies.
Yeah, it's there.
Any insight on how do you set family goals? What kind of family goals do you set? What kind of social goals do you set?
Yeah, so Christy and I would say that's not one area that we've really have done historically.
Yeah.
But I would say last year we did start with like, hey, what are our goals in leading our family? And we talked about it this last week too, even more. And I think our next step though is actually getting it on paper, right? And then putting a plan behind
there
it
you go.
and action.
Yeah.
So one thing we are going to do with the kids that we're really excited, we've never really done this as a family, and so my kids are 7, 4, and 1, so the one's not going to contribute, but is to do a vision board together.
Yeah, so
just to
cool.
see what they contribute for our family, right, and provide some guidelines on that. So I'm really excited to see, like, with us putting that vision up, and then how those things we'll start attracting those as a family unit. And I think it's so good for the kids to see that. Right?
If you want some great accountability, schedule your vacations and your fun trips and involve your kids, because they are not going to let you forget about the Disney cruise.
No.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So again, I would encourage you guys to be specific. And again, I think with all your goals, they shouldn't be things that you already know you're going to do. Right? I did a little one-on-one session with my assistant the other day, and I was asking him in this category, because nothing's wrong in this category. It's all awesome.
Yeah.
And setting goals is not about fixing something all the time. Maybe it is, but something doesn't have to be broken in order for you to fix any goals. And so what I asked Gavin, I was like, man, I love that the family dynamic is beautiful. What I would encourage you to consider is simply, what kind of moments would you like to create with your your family dynamic, right? What kind of moments and experiences would you like to have with your core group of friends? Right. Nothing's broken there, but if you could create a moment, if you could bring something to the table, bring an experience, not that you have to pay for it all, but could you enroll your group of friends to do a road trip to wherever,
right?
Pretty
cool.
So consider that we have this opportunity to create it, but it all starts with setting the goal, setting the vision.
Right.
So mind, body, soul, family, friends. Let's move and shift into business and money.
Yep.
What kind of breakthroughs have you had in your business and financial equities, and how did understanding goal setting contribute to that?
Yeah, totally. So I remember 2019 getting on your team, and then we were pivoting into 2020, and we talked about setting goals. And I think the most humbling thing I experienced was like, I really haven't set goals in my life, right?
Yeah.
I was working more like corporate America,
right.
So they kind of give you everything.
Yeah.
And then HR gives you all the tools, and you just kind of go through that. And I'm like, how do I do this when I'm my own business and entity, right? And so that was really humbling and really frustrating
But
that I was
know-
like in my mid to late 30s and not knowing how to do that.
And you know what? Here's the reality. Whether you're a real estate agent or whether you're working at Starbucks, right? You have an opportunity to excel at a level that only you can really control. Right? So you could go from working at Starbucks to owning a chain of Starbucks, right? If you set and made your mind up that you were going to do that. But it starts with having and taking responsibility that, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go for it. And so no matter who's listening, like where you are in business, I want everybody to know, like you have the ability to attract and get to the next level. And when you get into something like real estate, yeah, guess what? You're your own boss. Yep. And so it can be a slap in the face of like, oh shoot, this is all on me. But that should not be any different from somebody, you were at REI, yep. right? That shouldn't be any different from a student. You know, one of my nephews who I want to start working with his goals, he has to take ownership. Like, dude, this is your life. You're about to be 18 years old. This is on you. You want to do something? Stop putting it on mom, dad, your school, your college, whatever it is. This is on you, bro. Like, you have to be the architect. Yeah. And it starts with writing that vision down on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to transition from like being humbled that I've never achieved a goal into like where I'm at now, it's like I know I need that goal. And those goals are only going to be dreams unless I put strategy and a plan behind that.
Yeah.
And then that strategy and plan needs massive action. And so I know that I'm human at the end of the day.
Right.
I could have the most amazing big why in the world that motivates me on those slower days, but I need accountability too. And so to have accountability around the action, to go for my plan and strategy.
Fire.
To then know that will
How do you get accountability when you're your own boss? What kind of accountability around your actions do you implement?
Yeah, I think if you just stop, you can use the 7 equities to look at it with like family and friends.
Yeah.
So like obviously my wife and I looking at that and saying, look, this is what I want to pursue. Are you on board? Yeah. And then, you know, in her lovingly way, she's going to remind me of those.
Yes.
and then having good friends support, not friends that, oh, it's okay. Right. But no, friends that are going to call me out on my stuff when I'm not doing it. Right. Yeah. And then I think too, you know, I think having a growth mindset, and so always wanting to improve. And so this year I have already invested in, you know, getting more of like a sales technique and coach.
Awesome.
And with that comes weekly coaching and accountability and all that. And so I think that's a piece of looking at maybe a deficit on where I could improve, right? So so I think it's just looking at that. And this year is pretty unique, you know.
Just pausing. Yeah. Just stopping, right? We're constantly, it's like chopping wood. We got to be able to pause and sharpen that axe.
Yes.
It's awesome, man. Yeah. Do you have pre-scheduled sharpening time?
Once a year, unfortunately.
Once a year, yeah.
But it's become abundantly clear that needs to change.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's good.
And
man.
You're right. We just get caught up in this cycle of go.
Right.
And I think if I'm honest with it, it's kind of scary to like pause and give yourself that time.
Well, I think it could be scary too, because setting goals in general is basically saying you're bigger than you are right now. Yes. And it's so much easier to just stay like this. Because I know this. Ignorance creates fear. Knowledge creates confidence. Yeah. Right? So when we're aiming to set these goals, naturally they're scary because it's like, well, I don't know that person, right? Maybe I'll just stay like this. And so you actually have to be bold. You actually have to, it's sometimes it's tricky. Like you just can't get yourself to write. You know, the ego is not your amigo. The ego's like, nah, you can't start doing $10 million deals. You haven't done one since 2016.
Well, and it requires you to become someone you haven't been before.
In the moment. Yeah, that's awesome.
And do we like change? No.
Right, yeah. So that's what we want to encourage people to know is like, hey, guess what? When you're writing and it feels unnatural, that's because you're essentially saying you're capable of being somebody that you've never been before. And so, also want to remember Thach's ancient Vietnamese proverb. One of my mentors, Thach Nguyen, he's got his ancient Vietnamese proverb is Phukahau. Phukahau. You guys can figure that out. The how can block you from even setting the what.
Yeah.
When you're just writing out your goals, man, just chill. Don't worry about having this whole elaborate game plan right now. Allow yourself to dream and to just write that down, how you're going to do an Ironman, how you're going to pay your house off cash. Like, just write down the vision and put it on paper and put a time on it. And then you're going to go in and you'll have to sit with that thing and be like, okay, if I'm really going to pay off my house, if I'm really going to lose 50 pounds, if I'm really going to take my kids on this Disney cruise, whatever it is, well, that's in December. This is January. What do I have to do month after month, quarter after quarter to support that from happening? But it all starts with just giving yourself a 45-minute to 90-minute window and having fun with your 7 equity goals and just writing them down. To differentiate your business goals from your money goals, business is how you're growing in business. Money is plain and simple. How much money do you want to make? How much money do you want to save? How do you want to grow your money? Because a lot of times people get stuck with those two.
Right.
It's really clear. Like, I don't really mention much about money in my business goals. That's its own category. How about you?
Yeah. No, if I put money as a focus, I feel like I'm missing the point on what my goal is, right?
And notice how it's last, y'all. Notice how it's last is the last thing.
And with Thach, like, he says this a lot. What does money provide? Freedom, option, choices, right? And there is a good essence in money, but again, I think what I said earlier and what we've touched on is, like, if you're not looking at all the equities, you're taking whoever that person is into life, maybe earning more money, but it's the same you, just amplified. And who do you want that to be? Right?
Absolutely.
And again, being on your team, as long as I was, it was helpful to be like, okay, like, I need to be, so it's mindset, okay?
Right.
And then, like, how is work looking? Like, am I hustling enough? Am I consistent enough? How's family looking? Right? How's this area looking? And then, like, physically, like, am I where I want to be, right? And making all those adjustments. And all of them feed into, like, mindset, which then all feeds into your business. So they're all integrated. So.
Well, no one's going to do it for you. No one's going to design your dream life for you. I think we all have the opportunity to pull out a piece of paper and to get real with what we want to have manifest in our 2023. So lastly, the thing I would like people to consider too is that when you look at your goals are going to give you a certain amount of energy. Your goals are going to have you feel a certain way. I would also encourage you to not be too attached with that specific thing and be open to, well, I know you wanted to go to Hawaii, but you just had this opportunity for Costa Rica. Yes, we can have goals, we can have all these intentions, but a lot of times it was the essence and the energy of this goal that actually brought us to something else. And when you arrive at that something else, you're like, holy crap, this something else actually has the essence of that thing. So don't be too attached to having it be this exact specific way, which I know could be the exact opposite of having specific measurable goals. But give yourself grace in what might manifest.
Well, and I think of you pursuing the Ironman. Did your training go exactly as you set it out to be?
Hell no.
Right.
Hell
and that's
no.
life, though. That's
Hell
life.
no.
And if you're like me, Kev, which I think we are, like, it kind of like triggers us when it's not, 1 + 2 = 3. to get there.
But
it's like 1 plus 1
I got
plus 1.
the lack of training and the training that I missed out on, and the fact that I did like 50% of the training that you're supposed to do, dude, if that, it gave me exactly what I wanted, because like one of my core messages is that you could go to 0 to 100 real quick. You could go to the moon tonight real quick. Yeah. And so that's a part of my message, right? Like that fit with my message of what I'm talking about. If I had the exact specific training and that wouldn't have fit with my regular message of like, no, you don't have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You could go 0 to 100 right now. And so it was frustrating, yes, going through the process, but that's my path. That's my journey. And so, remember, these goals are about you. Like, this is your vision. Don't write it out for how you think somebody else says it should be. Write it out for a way that inspires you, because your journey, your path is unique to you, and you get to write out that story. So thank you. I know I just pulled you out of whatever you're doing before to share this message, but I thought you were a great candidate because you have elevated from being just an agent on my team to an individual agent and player in your own arena, to also being a leader within our brokerage here at Case. So I really appreciate the energy you're bringing to the company. Man. And I'm inspired to see what 2023 is going to have for you.
Yeah, thanks, man. Well, I got some stuff on my sleeve.
Let's go. All right, y'all. We're out. Project Mindset is back 2023. Let's go.